In this new Versus series, we take a look at two greats of basketball history as we analyze their skills, achievements, and career totals, ending with a conclusion on who is the greater basketball player overall. Today, our matchup is the Diesel, Shaquille O'Neal, versus the Dream, Hakeem Olajuwon. One legend built his legacy as a member of 6 different franchises, while the other spent almost the entirety of his career with the Houston Rockets before closing it out with the Raptors. Starting with the basics, Shaq was listed as a 7'1" center who typically weighed around 325 pounds. Hakeem was a 7' center who weighed around 255 pounds. We'll compare these two greats with 5 major categories, which sometimes vary in categories depending on positions and playstyles. In this video for these two all-time great big men, the categories are scoring, efficiency, rebounding, defense, and accolades. First off, scoring. Both of these legends are on the list of the greatest scorers in NBA history, as Shaq is in 8th place with over 28,000 points. The Diesel also has 2 scoring titles in his career and has a career average of 23.7 points. His career high was 61 points against the Clippers in 2000, and he averaged 24.3 points for his career in the playoffs, which ranks him 24th on the all-time list. Now Hakeem is in 11th place on the NBA's all-time scoring list with nearly 27,000 points. He had no scoring titles and had a career average of 21.8 points. His career high was 52 points against the Nuggets in 1990, and he averaged 25.9 points over his career in the playoffs, which ranks him in 11th place on the all-time list. For Shaq, you really can't put it perfectly into words just how dominant he was offensively in his prime, but you had to live through that era to completely understand it. Some of the tallest and largest centers in the league he simply tossed aside like they were ragdolls. Night after night, defenses knew exactly what the game plan was and how the offense would be run through Shaq, and they still couldn't stop him. Shaq was so good offensively that he often made the spot-up shooters on his team significantly better. When the defense would have to send a second or even third defender to collapse on Shaq, often the open teammates were guys like Nick Anderson, Brian Shaw, Rick Fox, and Robert Horry. Many of these role players made names for themselves by being the beneficiaries of Shaq demanding so much attention. While Shaq essentially played bully ball, Hakeem was likely the most offensively skilled big man to ever lace him up. He had an all-time great mid-range game, fadeaway, and jump hook. I won't even say arguably for this next one, it's simply a fact. Hakeem has the greatest footwork of any center who's ever played the game. He was the finesse to Shaq's power, the grace to O'Neal's authority. Although you could certainly make the case that Hakeem scored in more variety of ways, you also have to acknowledge that 2 points is 2 points, regardless of how you get them. Hakeem may have been more talented offensively, but whatever Shaq was lacking in skills and talent, he easily made up for it with power and brute force. Shaq has more scoring titles, is higher on the all-time scoring list, and has a higher career average. Scoring goes to Shaquille O'Neal. Second up is rebounding. Neither of these centers would you describe as GOATs of rebounding, but both of them did their jobs and did it consistently for a long period of time. For his career, Shaq averaged 10.9 rebounds, getting as high as 13.6 in 2000, which was his near-unanimous MVP season. He never once led the league in rebounding, which is a bit surprising considering his size, strength, and how long he played. Regardless, his consistency was good enough for him to end up in the 15th spot on the all-time rebounds list. Now Hakeem was significantly lighter than Shaq and wasn't able to impose his will with sheer force to the extent that Shaq was, but Hakeem was very good at reading the floor, boxing out, and anticipating the direction of the rebound. Over his career, he averaged 11.1 rebounds, which is just slightly ahead of Shaq. He also has 2 rebounding titles, getting as high as 14 rebounds per game in 1990. He's also 2 spots ahead of Shaq on the all-time rebounds list. No matter which statistic or measure you look at in this category, it's extremely close. But in almost every instance, Hakeem has a small edge, which means rebounding goes ever so slightly in the favor of Olajuwon. Third up is efficiency. Getting in an ideal position to score was Shaq's specialty. He couldn't consistently hit anything outside of 10 feet, but he really didn't need to considering his ability to assert his will in the low post. With Shaq's baby hooks, his dunks, and all the other ways he scored in the interior, he shot a remarkable 58.2% from the field for his career, and led the league in field goal percentage a whopping 10 times. His career 58.2% is the 7th highest field goal percentage in NBA history, and it's significantly higher than Hakeem Olajuwon's 51.2%. With that being said, being an efficient player is a lot more than simply field goal percentage. One of the major aspects is free throw shooting. When the opposing team makes you earn the 2 points, can you punish them from 15 feet out? To say this was a struggle for Shaq would be a massive understatement. He was one of the worst free throw shooters of all time, who shot a terrible 52.7% for his career. He was the worst free throw shooter in the entire league a baffling 8 times throughout his career. Needless to say, the mid-range artist that was Hakeem Olajuwon shot a significantly more efficient 71.2% from the free throw line. And now, when you factor in both field goal percentage and free throw percentage, their true shooting percentage is much more comparable. Technically, from a pure numbers standpoint, Shaq still has the edge in true efficiency. But he was so terrible from the free throw line that there was plenty of instances during the final minutes of games where Shaq had to go to the bench on offense. That way, the defense couldn't intentionally foul him and force him to make free throws. You can't be efficient if you're not even playing. So what small edge Shaq has over Hakeem in true shooting percentage, he loses in my mind due to this fact. I have to call efficiency a tie between the two centers. Next up is defense, and every category has been pretty close up to this point, but this one is not. Throughout Shaq's career, he was a pretty good defensive anchor and rim protector for his teams. He averaged 2.3 blocks over his career, but he never once led the league in blocked shots. He also made just 3 All-Defense teams. Hakeem Olajuwon has nearly as many Defensive Player of the Year awards as Shaq has All-Defense team appearances. Hakeem had 9 All-Defense team appearances throughout his career, which is 3 times what Shaq had. He was an absolute dog when contesting shots, as he averaged 3.1 blocks over his career and is easily the all-time leader in recorded block shots. Just how big is the gap exactly? Well, he's ahead of second place on the all-time list by 541 blocked shots. To put that in perspective, in each of the last 3 seasons of the NBA, the leading shot blocker has finished with around 195 blocks in the season. That means Hakeem Olajuwon is just about 3 league-leading seasons of blocks ahead of the nearest competitor. Along with that, only 10 players in league history have won the Defensive Player of the Year award multiple times. Of those 10 players, no one averaged more points in his career than Hakeem Olajuwon. Typically, the greatest rim protectors in NBA history are not also among the greatest scorers of all time, but Hakeem Olajuwon and Wilt Chamberlain are the exceptions. It's also worth mentioning that Hakeem averaged 1.7 steals over his career, which is incredibly high for someone who plays the center position, and is nearly 3 times what Shaq averaged. So yeah, no surprises here, as defense easily goes to Hakeem. Last on the list of categories is accolades, and both of these legends had a ton of them. Shaq was a 4-time champion, a 3-time Finals MVP, and he was the 2000 League MVP. He made 15 All-Star teams, 14 All-NBA teams, and 3 All-Defense teams. He was also a 2-time scoring champion. In his 19 seasons, he averaged 23.7 points, 10.9 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 0.6 steals, and 2.3 blocks on 58.6 true shooting percentage. Hakeem was a 2-time champion, a 2-time Finals MVP, and the 1994 League MVP. He made 12 All-Star teams, 12 All-NBA teams, and 9 All-Defense teams. He was a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time rebounding champion, and a 3-time blocks champion. It's also worth mentioning that he achieved a quadruple-double in the 1990 season, and was only 1 assist shy of having a second one within the same month. In his 18 seasons, he averaged 21.8 points, 11.1 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.7 steals, and 3.1 blocks on 55.3% true shooting percentage. As usual, it's really close in these versus videos, and in this video in particularly, there's so much to be said that we haven't already covered in these categories. Like how both of these big men were underrated passers, and how they each were some of the greatest clutch performers in playoff history. But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I personally rank Hakeem Olajuwon slightly higher on the all-time list than Shaquille O'Neal. In my opinion, he's simply the more complete player, and he's legitimately in the argument for the title of greatest two-way player in NBA history. Yes, Shaq has twice as many championships as Hakeem does, but I also think that a part of that is the level of superstar support that they each had during their primes. This is an actual stat, and feel free to fact check me on this, but Hakeem Olajuwon is the only player in NBA history to lead his team to back-to-back championships without a second All-Star on the roster. You could argue that Clyde Drexler was an all-star caliber player in their second championship run, but he literally wasn't selected. And you and I both know that a young Kobe Bryant wasn't a borderline all-star in Shaq's second championship run, but he was a legit superstar. So here's my hot take. If you give Hakeem Olajuwon the talent Shaq had supporting him through his best years, like Penny Hardaway and Horace Grant in Orlando, a young Kobe and a multitude of shooters in LA, or Dwayne Wade at his absolute best in Miami, then Hakeem is getting at least as many championships as Shaq did, if not more. So, am I full of crap? Let me know in the comments section which all-time great was the better center, Shaq or Hakeem. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.